Hey, welcome to Pretty Well. Do you want to get to the root causes of your health concerns? Do you find yourself Googling, why do I feel this way? And looking for solutions to feel great again? I'm Lisa Smith, and I too felt exhausted, achy, and like I was aging too quickly. I wanted to look and feel like myself again, and spent way too much time and money going to practitioners, even functional medicine practitioners, and not getting results. So I became a functional medicine practitioner myself and learned how to identify and fix root causes to health issues. The good news is there is so much you can do to reclaim your wellness. In this podcast, you'll find quick, simple, and evidence-based guidance that you can easily fit into your day so your energy will be soaring, your mind clear, and your skin will return to its beautiful glow. Let's dive in.
Hi, friends. Before we dive into today's episode, I want to let you know about something I'm really excited about. I've started an email list for our podcast community, and I'd love for you to join if you're interested in going deeper into this wellness journey together. In these emails, I'll be sharing updates on the podcast, sneak peeks of upcoming episodes and guests, plus some bonus wellness tips and insights that don't always make it into the episodes. You can find the link to join in the show notes or just head to thewelldonepod.com. And with that, let's dive into today's episode.
Nothing spells fun like something overdone. And chronic stress is something overdone. We're taking a good thing and we're pushing it way out of bounds.
Welcome to Well Done, the podcast where we explore how wellness shapes modern business, beauty, and life. I'm your host, Kat Vong, and after years of navigating my own chronic skin struggles, I've learned that true beauty and wellness go far beyond the surface. Now, I'm on a mission to uncover how we can all live better inside and out. Whether you're an entrepreneur, beauty enthusiast, or just figuring out what wellness means to you, you're in the right place. Let's dive into today's episode. Let's go. Hi, fellow well-beings. Hope your week is off to a great start. If you're just joining me today, welcome. This is the podcast where wellness meets purpose and ambition, because we talk about not only living well through conversations and, health and healing, but also about the bigger picture, because I think that building a life and version of yourself that feels aligned and purposeful is one of the best things you can do for your well-being. And on that note, I hope you like the nickname that I'm giving you, well-being, because if you're here, you're not just listening, you're part of a community of people that are committed to living well and being well. And if you don't like it, feel free to send me a DM on Instagram because I am open to suggestions. Okay, so today's episode, we are covering several different topics. We'll be talking about gut health, hormones, stress, and also the importance of inner work on healing, which is a topic that hits really close to home for me, and you'll hear why in this episode. Our guest today is Lisa Smith. She is a functional medicine dietitian and a gut health expert who just really knows her stuff. Lisa has dual master's degrees in nutrition and human biology, and she's also helped hundreds of people break free from exhaustion, gut issues, hormonal imbalances. And what makes her perspective really valuable is that she's been on her own serious health journey. She's dealt with Hashimoto's, hormonal challenges, so she understands the science and she also understands the real life struggle. Lisa is also the host of the Pretty Well podcast, which is ranked in the top 2% of podcasts globally. So if you like wellness and you love listening to podcasts, please check out her podcast as well, because on her show, she shares more science-backed strategies for healing your gut and balancing hormones, some of which we'll get into today. And we will also discuss the role of stress as really the main driver in our health issues, and we'll talk about why that is. All right, grab your lukewarm coffee. Let's get into it. Well, Lisa, thanks so much for coming on the Well Done podcast.
Kat, thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk to you, and it's an honor.
Same here. Let's start with your journey. I would love to hear a little bit more about your background and even the health challenges you faced before you started on this path of helping others.
Sure, I'd be happy to. And just a little background, even before my health challenges. When I was little, all my life, my granddad was a cancer specialist surgeon. And he used to tell us, so every Thanksgiving, patients, would bring the Thanksgiving turkey. And every Easter, they would bring the Easter ham. That was how they wanted to thank him. And they used to, I just remember this ever since I was little. We would go visit him on those holidays. And they would say, your grandfather saved my life, or he saved my wife's life. We're forever grateful. And that's why they would bring these as tokens of their appreciation and their affection. And it just blew my mind away. And then being really impressionable, I remember they would leave and he would say, I would so much rather help people prevent this horrible disease than to try to fix it afterward. And I remember asking him as a 7-year-old, like, you can do that? You can help people not get cancer, which was, of course, it's always dreaded. And he said, yeah, many times you can, not always, but many times you can. And he was my hero. I decided that is what I want to do when I grow up. And then, of course, life brings you so many paths and turns. It was always a seed planted in the back of my mind. But I ended up taking a different journey for quite a while. And then when I had kids, I was fortunate enough to stay home with them. So I had been in sales for years and had done different things. Even somewhat, I find it to be ironically, I was a drug rep, I was a pharmaceutical rep for part of that journey. And that's so different from what I do now, but it's just interesting. And when I had kids and got to stay home, I went back to my passion of natural health and I researched and researched and researched and decided, okay, now that I get a second chance at this is what I'm going to do. That was the beginning of my journey. But after my second kiddo was born, I ended up with Hashimoto. So as I was in this process of saying, I'm going to help people get healthy, I was getting less healthy. And I became very sick. I went undiagnosed for a year because when you have a 2-year-old and a brand new baby, you just think you're sleep deprived. You don't realize that all these things like severe exhaustion and fatigue down to your bones. And my walking started to become affected because I was in so much pain. And I remember thinking, man, I just need a good night's sleep. And that went on for a year until I went to the doctor and was really scared. And they diagnosed me with Hashimoto's, which, for our listeners today, a lot of you know, and some of you even have Hashimoto's. But for those who aren't quite as familiar, it's an autoimmune type of hypothyroidism where the body begins to attack the thyroid. So you're not making enough thyroid hormone or hormones. So that was the start of my journey. So then I got even more passionate. And then I kind of was like, all right, I'm on fire for this stuff.
What are the causes of Hashimoto's? I mean, I'm kind of familiar, but not really. Like, I don't know if there are ways that you can prevent something like that.
So that is the first question I asked my first endocrinologist. And he said, well, it's idiosyncratic. And he was cute. He said, that means your doctor's an idiot and we don't know. He was just teasing. But basically what he was saying was, we don't know. We truly don't know. From a functional medicine standpoint, we get a lot further down the road on that. Well, we can kick the can further down the road. And we know that all autoimmunity is the result of 3 triggers. We call it the 3-legged stool. And the 3-legged stool cat always involves a leaky gut, a genetic propensity, and a trigger. And that trigger can be anything. It can be environmental, it can be emotional, it's some sort of stressor on the system. It can be anything, literally mold, parasites, Lyme disease, a gut infection, a cold. Like it can be an intense season of stress, anything. But when you have the first 2, you have leaky gut and a genetic propensity, and then you get that trigger. Those are the right combinations for the genes to turn on for that disease or for any autoimmunity.
Interesting. So how did this new understanding change your perspective on health? Because you had grown up being very interested in health because of your grandfather. Then you went in sales for a while. Was there anything that was different about how you understood health before and then after your health challenges?
Yes. So different. I went from thinking I knew a lot. It's just like anything. The more you learn about something, the less you feel like you know. Do you know what I mean? You start diving in and you're like, oh my gosh, I know all this stuff that I didn't know a year ago. And then you realize, oh my gosh, there's so much more to learn. So before I had Hashimoto's, I thought, oh, it's just really, it's diet, it's taking good care of yourself, it's getting some sleep. Well, after doing years of research and becoming a functional medicine, functional wellness practitioner, opening my own clinic, working with people for years, you realize there's so many other factors and nuances that go into it. And it's so much more complicated, although it's very simple in a lot of ways. Like you can really drill down and go, let's hit these 3 pillars. we can't change genetics, but we can definitely change leaky gut and we can definitely identify a trigger. It's a journey. It's not an overnight thing. But then you realize, oh, well, what was the role of stress or trauma playing in your life? Maybe it's past trauma or deep stress or something new. So you start then peeling the layers of that onion, and it's fascinating. The more you learn, the more there is to figure out.
Right. And in our previous chat, you had mentioned this saying, a pill for an ill, which is the conventional, the conventional approach to dealing with issues. So if somebody had leaky gut and they're predisposed and then they are triggered, if they didn't see somebody like you, they didn't go to a functional nutritionist or practitioner, what would their doctor tell them to do?
It depends on the doctor and their level of knowledge. A traditional doctor, a traditional endocrinologist, I started there because I wasn't practicing yet. I was still in the middle of my figuring out stage of, oh, when will I open a practice and what's that going to take and what all do I need to get in terms of education and all that stuff. So I did the first several years, I just went to traditional doctors and kept getting pretty much the same thing of you'll never fix it. We don't know what causes it. You need to go on thyroid replacement, hormone replacement, and that's it. But sometimes I've found that a lot of MDs are getting savvy and they're saying, let's look at food sensitivities because gluten is implicated heavily in Hashimoto's disease. I think it is an inflammatory contributor in all autoimmunity and for everyone, but specifically in Hashimoto's. And here's why. This blows my mind. There's a concept called molecular mimicry, and all that means it's just a 25-cent phrase for saying your body sees two things very similarly molecularly. So it sees gluten molecularly similar to your thyroid. So if you are eating gluten and you have Hashimoto's, there's much evidence, much research that backs up the number one thing you should do is cut out gluten for Hashimoto's in particular. And there's a great scientist, his name is Alessio Fasano. Our listeners can look him up. He's brilliant, and he's the one who's done this research.
Got it. And then if you were to address the leaky gut and the triggers, can somebody reverse Hashimoto's or at least not have symptoms anymore? Or I guess the question is, do you still have it? Like, do you still carry it?
Such a good question. So to answer your question first, can someone stop it? They can. And there's a lot of evidence behind that. To answer your second question, have you heard the phrase, the plumber whose pipes need fixing? That's me. That is me. I spent so many years working ridiculous hours helping other people get better that I was like, okay, I'm eating clean and I'm trying to get some sleep, but I'm raising babies, I'm homeschooling, and I'm running a business. So I just couldn't wrap any more time up to keep all the balls in the air. I was like, something's got to give. And sadly, it has been me. Now I've sold my business, which is amazing, to an incredible functional medicine MD. And she's just helping so many people. She's changing the world. She's amazing. And I have moved. So, I'm in a year of fixing that, like healing. And I'm like, okay, I really need to get serious about addressing my Hashimoto's. So yes, it can be fixed. And there's a wonderful pharmacist. Her name is Isabella Wentz. So if anyone has Hashimoto's or even has elevated thyroid antibodies, this woman is fire. She had Hashimoto's. She's put it in remission. She's helped lots of people put it in remission. So I've made a promise to myself in the next several months, I'm going back. I've read her books. I'm going back and I'm going to practice what I preach and what I've taught other people to preach. But yes, it can be helped.
That's great. I mean, you're busy and I'm kind of that way too. You give advice, but sometimes you can't always take your own advice because life happens. So let's actually go back a little bit. When someone comes to see you and, they have a symptom, and it doesn't necessarily need to be a symptom that's related to Hashimoto's, but just a general symptom, something that's been causing them some, discomfort, what would be the first things that you would try to help address with them?
The very best way you mentioned a pill for an ill, and that is just to give a little context, for our audience, that
A pill for an ill just is addressing a symptom, right? Okay, so if you have some chronic condition, say you have chronically elevated blood sugar, so you have insulin resistance, you're not at type 2 diabetes yet. And a doctor says, we're just going to put you on metformin now just to reduce your sugars. That's a pharmaceutical, that's a medicine. We're going to put you on that to reduce your sugars. You don't really need to change anything from diet or lifestyle standpoint. Just go on the metformin. That's a pill for an ill because we know we can reverse insulin resistance. We know that. Another great example is a statin. If you're getting slightly elevated cholesterol, well, there's so much more to that story. It's not just that bad cholesterol is bad. My sister just sent me an article that when thyroid goes down, bad cholesterol goes up. So we need to look at other parts of the picture. So just to put a statin on there, especially there's a lot of research coming out about statins now that's not favorable. So we don't want to just put a pill for an ill. We want to get to why is the body doing this? The body is not confused. The body is infinitely wise. We've been given that in creation. We got to get to why. We can't just slap a Band-Aid on there and say you're good for the rest of your life because that's not accurate. We can do that in functional medicine as well. We can apply supplements. We can go, oh, so you have insulin resistance or you have high blood sugars? I love a supplement called Glucolyze. If I just do that and I don't say, what else is going on in your life? How's your diet? How's your sleep? What are your stress levels? All those will raise your blood sugar. So the first step in true functional medicine, if we really want to get to the root cause, it is an extensive intake process and an intake form that helps us to personalize what we're going to recommend as a first step for somebody. So I can give you common first steps, but if someone were, saying, oh, I want to come in and work with you, first thing I do is say, give me a great picture of this puzzle we have going on. Let's figure out those themes. Then we start with what the major themes are and we start to address those. Often it's diet, but not always. Sometimes it's a high stress level, which, can really throw things off.
What are some signs that, let's say it's migraines or extensive bloating or something like that? A lot of the times it's like signs of gut inflammation or dysbiosis, right? What can our listeners start to pay attention to in terms of symptoms that could be indicating something's off?
The first thing I would say is there something that just keeps coming up, like bloating? Are you bloated a lot after you eat or when you wake up even? Or here's the classic symptom for bloating. You wake up, your belly's pretty flat. If it's severe, you take a drink of water and you blow up. And then it gets worse all day until you feel 6 months pregnant by dinner time. That is a classic. And so in that kind of case, that's not normal. So if you just don't feel well, if there's something, migraines, bloating, stomach pain, bowel irregularity, whether you're constipated or whether you have frequent diarrhea or whether you are alternating between those, excessive fatigue, there's normal fatigue, I had a big day. So before I got on today, I went paddleboarding. Cat, I have not been paddleboarding in at least 3 years, maybe 4. And toward the end, and it was kind of long, and I had to carry the paddle. I'm like, what the heck? I thought I was in shape. I am tired. And then I fell off at the very end, and I was like, are you kidding? I'm tired. I'm going to sleep just great tonight. But so that's normal fatigue. Not normal fatigue is you wake up and you're not rested. Some other examples of not normal fatigue. You feel like there's lead in your legs. You can't concentrate. You can't get your brain to fire. You're like, I can't get it. You feel like you could close your eyes all the time. Like at any given time, you could close your eyes and go to sleep. A cup of coffee does nothing if you drink coffee. Just some of those things that you in your head, we're very intuitive people, even if we don't, even if we get so busy, we're like, I don't know, I'm not that. You actually are. We're all very intuitive. If there's some little voice in your head saying, this just doesn't seem right, it's not. It doesn't mean it's super serious, but it means with the right practitioner, you can take a look at that. You can definitely figure out either through testing or through someone who's really experienced. They just know what to look for, these patterns. And you go, oh, that pattern, more often than not, I see that as SIBO or H. pylori, or, I have a hunch you might be in a moldy environment. Practitioners kind of get an area that they're like, that's hallmark. So just go with your gut, pun intended, go with your gut.
On the subject of the gut, let's talk about how important the gut is for everything, right? One area that I would love to dive into is how stress impacts the gut.
I have done almost a 180 on that in practice. I used to think stress was kind of like a supporting actor, oh yeah, it's contributing to. I have now come to the place where I think stress is the primary cause. So I've changed my cycle. We look at cycles kind of like there's the gut, there's stress, there's sleep, there's, diet, there's activity, relationships. We kind of look at that wheel and say, what part of the wheel isn't holding up the rest of the wheel? And I used to think they were all just kind of equal and we just needed to start digging up. Now, I think stress is the impetus because when you have when you have stress, you have elevated cortisol chronically. It's damaging. It's inflammatory. We're not meant to carry that. It puts holes in our gut.
Literally puts holes in our gut.
It literally is an impetus for leaky gut. Not the only one, but it absolutely, if you have chronically elevated cortisol, it does. And it raises our glucose and it raises our inflammation and it causes fatigue. It's a good thing when we need it. But I have a friend who has the best saying, and she says, nothing spells fun like something overdone. And chronic stress is something overdone. We're taking a good thing and we're pushing it way out of bounds and we're causing it to be harmful.
What would you say is chronic stress, though? So to the listener who is, every day maybe going to work, experiencing some stress at work, maybe annoying coworkers, boss, coming home, having to make dinner for the kids, it's kind of like a constant, not necessarily like crazy stress, but it is a constant, you need to get things done, a little bit of overwhelm. Would you say that constitutes the chronic stress, or does it have to be bigger issues in your life that might be contributing to the leaky gut?
That is going to depend on the temperament of the person. So one person will have those days, day after day, but their outlook on life is, those people who are just always upbeat. Hey, I'm good. And it's genuine. They're not Pollyanna. They're not putting on an act. It's authentic. They just look at the world through rose-colored glasses. They're not going to typically in that scenario register the same level of stress as someone who says, oh my gosh, that George at work, he irritates me so every single time, every day. I can't stand when he walks by my desk. He never stops talking. Then I got home and oh my gosh, like nobody liked the food. Like you can actually feel the difference in the energy, right?
Yeah.
So it really depends on how the energy hits someone. Something that is even more hidden. There are two things and they're pretty related. One is called deep stress. Deep stress is something that we feel much deeper. Sometimes, I've been here. I'm not stressed. I don't even feel stressed. Like when I was working 70-hour work weeks a couple years in a row and doing all the things I mentioned at the beginning of this episode, I did not know. I mean, I knew I was stressed, but I was just like, I'm keeping it going. I'm keeping it going. And when I stopped, my whole body was like, what the heck? Like, seriously, I felt almost like a tsunami, like come over me for months. So, that's a deep stress that we kind of shove down and we don't necessarily recognize it as what it is. And then there's trauma, and it can be little T trauma, big T trauma, but trauma, we kind of, the book, The Body Keeps the Score.
Mm-hmm.
The basis of that book and another one by Gabor Mate, which is called When the Body Says No. The premise of those books is that we store that stress and those emotions and that trauma in our tissues. It literally stays in our tissues, in our fascia. And so, that's why body work often will cause people to weep or cry or yell, because they are releasing emotions that have been pent up and kind of hidden away by the body to protect us.
Yeah, I actually heard a quote that is something around our issues are in our tissues.
Yes.
I just love this topic about stress in the gut because I had no idea that stress actually could cause leaky gut. So let's say you do have the leaky gut, then what? What would be the solution?
Yes. And so my first couple years of practice, I still thought even with that first patient, I was like, oh, stress is important for her. Like it's a main player, not a side player. But even through the first couple of years, I was like, oh yeah, stress. Yeah, we all have stress. You're going to have to, figure it out, do some meditation, but, or whatever, deep breathing. But I would incorporate some of those lifestyle practices into protocols, like, okay, definitely deep breathing, definitely meditation. But when we're talking about leaky gut, so now we're talking about a whole ball of wax, right? We got this factor and maybe some others. Then I use a protocol. I format my protocols into 3 sections. And I think most people in holistic health and functional wellness do the same thing. We look at lifestyle factors, we look at nutrition factors, and we look at supplements. And then we put together the puzzle for the first couple months that addresses what we see as the main players at this point in that person's life. So, for example, say Mary comes in and she has leaky gut and she clearly has a lot of stress and it's distressing to her. It's not like the rose-colored glasses person, right? So then the protocol would have in the lifestyle recommendations, let's look, here are some tools for addressing your stress. And as I mentioned, deep breathing. And then I would give an example of here's a really easy deep breathing exercise, box breathing, that do this twice a day and see how that helps. Prayer, meditation, quiet time alone in nature. Like so I give kind of like tools in a toolbox. And then the next recommendation, maybe depending on that person's situation, seek out a counselor who specializes in blank, so that you can start to address that piece of it as well. And if I knew someone, then I would recommend a name. And if I didn't, I just give some hints for how to do that. And then other lifestyle guidelines, like make sure your sleep is dialed in, tools in the toolbox for that. Make sure you have some physical activity that's going to help you reduce your stress naturally. That will reduce cortisol naturally. So this is that lifestyle piece. Then there would be a dietary piece that would address leaky gut specifically and start to put in nutrients that will heal the lining. And then there would be some nutritional piece that helps with that, like maybe collagen, then supplement piece that does that as well.
Nutrients that fix or help the lining, what would be some ones that you would recommend? So you said collagen.
Collagen is amazing. So collagen, from a food standpoint, we're looking primarily at collagen. And we can do that through a collagen powder. We can do that through supplements, the capsules. Or we can even look at organic bone broth, because organic bone broth and things that are rich in collagen. So slowly cooked meats with the bones in them, things that where collagen will break down, and we're consuming that dietarily. And then there are supplements that are amazing that actually need to be on board for gut healing. So in addition to collagen, then we look at things like L-glutamine, zinc carnosine. Those are 2 big players. DGL, which is a type of licorice. And then you look at certain herbs that are considered mucilaginous, and all that, again, just a fancy word that means they make mucus, like healthy mucus in the gut, that replace that lining, that help it to flourish, because it kind of gets dry and cracky and starts to get little fissures, little tears. So it helps to start like soothing that and healing it.
So fascinating. I think I told you this before, but I had gone through my own protocol when my skin was really bad. And I think I went on some of those supplements, but I had no idea what they were doing or what they were for. But now I'm okay. Like my gut, I think, is healed. So they must have been effective.
Yeah, until we really start to do the deep dive, it's easy for all those names to run together and, hard to know what they are.
Let's switch gears for a bit and talk about hormone health. We've heard a lot about perimenopause lately. We are in an age, or I'm at an age where I'm starting to think about that as I'm getting older. What can I do to prevent some of the symptoms that I've heard about for menopause? So if somebody is struggling in their 30s and 40s with mood changes, let's say they just don't feel good, what are some signals that it could be a hormone problem?
Perimenopause is a great time to start to look at some of those questions, because if you wait until after menopause is in full swing, you've lost some years that you suffered and didn't have to, and you feel like you kind of have to regain ground. So common things to be looking for, again, the gut plays a huge role, and we'll unpack that in a minute. But you want to look at your gut health. Or how is your bloating? Is there, do you have bloating? Do you have stomach pain? Do you have irregularity? Are you gassy? Are you things just not working right? What's happening with your cycle? These are questions we want to ask ourselves. What's happening with my cycle? Is it getting a little irregular? Am I having more than one cycle a month? Am I having months without a cycle? Has the heaviness changed? And Am I experiencing headaches? How's my irritability level? Are things changing? Do I just feel like I could rip someone's face right off their head? And if I do, if that's not characteristic for me, those are all signs that, that things can get better for sure. I just today, when I went paddleboarding with my friend, I am menopausal, have been for a couple years. And so menopause, if you're in perimenopause, menopause is when your periods completely stop for one full year. Then it's considered you're in menopause. So that was a couple years ago for me. 6 months later, I decided these symptoms suck and I'm going on bioidentical hormone replacement. And it's been life-changing. I just shared that with my friend today. I was like, girl, you got to get to the doctor. You got to get this dialed in because you will feel 1,000% different and better, more like yourself again. So when you start feeling these things, you're like, I don't feel like myself anymore. I don't know what's happening. That's a sign right there. Like, there are some things we can do that are definitely going to make life better.
What is the bioidentical, you said
Oh, yeah.
bioidentical hormone replacement?
Yes. So I'll just give a little context. When we're hitting perimenopause, so every month we cycle. As our estrogen goes up and down, then our progesterone comes up and comes back down in the different phases. And we have certain levels, right? So say we have like estrogen here, this is normal. Progesterone here, this is normal for ever since we start cycling. Well, during perimenopause, what happens is progesterone starts to do this. And we end up with something called estrogen dominance, which is heavy periods, painful periods, sometimes headaches, sometimes just body aches, inflammation, feeling really, really irritable. Because there's this discrepancy in the ratio. The ratio was supposed to be here. Now it's here. It's not coming back up by itself at all, ever. So then what starts to happen is this estrogen, it doesn't just go down. It starts doing the stock market. It's going up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down. So we start seeing some of these wild rides, right? And the progesterone's not there to buffer it until it eventually just plummets. And once it does that, you're in menopause. So bioidentical hormone replacement, just HRT is hormone replacement. That's just kind of, if they're starting to do this and this, it's just bringing them back up to that normal ratio. And you start to go, oh, okay, like I'm feeling myself again. Bioidentical means, and that's my preferred, bioidentical means this has been formulated to be specific to your body. It's either compounded or it's a pharmaceutical that's naturally aligns with how your body makes it. It's not like horse urine, which is Premarin. It's taken from horse urine. These are bioidentical to us, women.
Okay. Is it new in terms of approaches or has it been around?
No, good question. Hormone replacement has been around forever. And back, way, way back, I'm talking 1960s, maybe before, 1970s. They didn't realize there wasn't enough research done that they didn't realize that if you just replace estrogen, so when women get hot flashes and they get a lot of these symptoms like heavy periods, then no period, and then 3 weeks out of the month, and then nothing for 4 months, and they would start to replace estrogen and the hot flashes would go away and women would start to feel normal again. What they didn't realize is if they didn't offset that with progesterone as our body is meant to be, then it increased the risk of cancer. Then a study came out and said, don't ever do estrogen replacement, you'll get cancer. And then, so it's been all this drama. It's like a soap opera in the medical world. And then years later, all this research came out and said that research was flawed. It won't cause cancer if you're getting the ratio right, or it should not cause cancer if you're getting the ratio right. And in addition to that, it protects your bones, your brain, and your heart. So there are many long-term benefits as well as short-term symptomatic relief. So to answer that question, hormone replacement's been around for a really long time. They keep refining it as they go. And now bioidentical, I'm not sure how new it is. I think because of that research, it was called the Women's Health Initiative. That was the flawed one. They said you'll get cancer, and it scared everybody out of hormone replacement for a number of years. The medical community is finally catching up with the truth again. So thank goodness. But I don't know how long the bioidentical has been around, but finally it's coming back in vogue, if you will. And people are starting to not be as scared of it.
Got it. So if somebody who is not quite in the menopausal time frame yet, right? Like maybe in their late 30s, early 40s. Are there any things that we can do to prevent, or not prevent, because it's obviously not preventable, but to like ease that transition, or things that we should be paying attention to, I guess, for our own sanity?
Yes, there are. And there's some really easy things. First of all, like low hanging fruit, where before you even go to a doctor and say, let's talk about balancing hormones. The first thing is it's going to go back to the gut. And the gut, this is so cool. You mentioned dysbiosis. And dysbiosis, just to give a little background for everyone, dysbiosis is when your gut bacteria, think of your gut having two armies. They have a good army and a bad army. We want the good army bigger than the bad army. The bad army will always be there, but as long as it's small and the good army outnumbers it, then it's symbiotic. It's not a problem. No big deal. Dysbiosis is when the bad army takes over and the good army pretty much gets wiped out or is not strong enough to help. So part of the microbiome is called, this is so cool, it's called the estrobolome, meaning estrogen, the estrobolome. And that means that in our gut, if we have good microbiome balance, we got the good guys outweighing, our gut will break down estrogen and eliminate it from our body, as it should. But if we have dysbiosis, it won't. So what it will do is it will recycle it. It'll send that estrogen back into circulation, into our body. Now we have that estrogen dominance. And estrogen dominance, now we have those symptoms I mentioned earlier that they feel terrible. So the number one thing is clean up gut health. Easy ways to do that, just at home. If you notice gut issues, and we don't always notice gut issues from gut issues, but if you do notice them, that's obvious. That is a check engine light. So look for things you're sensitive to, cut those out. See if you might need some enzyme support. Like there's some pretty easy things. I'm trying to think of the easiest. The big one would be if you know you always react to corn, don't eat corn. If you know you always get bloated when you eat a certain food. This is so weird. I always get dry eye in the middle of the night if I eat beef. I don't mind beef, but I wake up in the middle of the night with like sandpaper in my eyes. I'm like, oh, that's so interesting. That's clearly a sensitivity that I avoid it for the most part. So if you notice something quirky like that, just cut it out for 30 days. Make a couple notes like how you're feeling and then add it back in and see if you start to notice any of those symptoms again. That's easy. Some other things that are easy, take a really good probiotic. That will start to help build the good guys, the good army. I like a brand called Seed, SEED. It's nice. You don't have to keep it refrigerated. It comes in a little green jar. It's glass. It's double, it has a coating so it doesn't break down by your stomach acid before it can do its job. So take a really good probiotic, check your food sensitivities, start to reduce to the point of where you eliminate most ultra processed foods. Those are things that come in boxes and bags, the junk food in the junk food aisle, start to replace that with whole foods. And then lastly, add prebiotics. So we talked about probiotics. Those are the good guys. Prebiotics are the food that feeds the good guys. So if you have a good army, you want to feed it. We feed the troops to keep them going. So to feed the troops, you get prebiotics. You can buy prebiotics as a supplement, but you can get them in really delicious foods. So things like onions, leeks, garlic, that's easy to get in. Avocado, artichoke, bananas, apples, those are all really great sources. Kiwi, great sources of prebiotics. So get those foods, some of those foods in every day. Now you're feeding your good army. So that would be the starting point. Then if that doesn't fix it, then it's time to talk to somebody. On my show, I've had a handful of women's health specialists, especially in midlife. And some of them have recommended starting a very small dose of bioidentical hormone replacement in perimenopause to even out some of those fluctuations. So, that may be something to consider, at least do some research about.
Got it. I think earlier you mentioned when the hormones are kind of like the gap is really large between the progesterone and the estrogen, right? They might have really bad cramps or extreme fatigue. How do you know, though, the difference between having really bad cramps and extreme fatigue as normal menstrual cycle symptoms and or potentially you're going through perimenopause because let's say I've always had bad cramps. So then, you don't really know the difference.
When someone always has really bad cramps, that does tend to be, again, I'm going to say tend to be, I'm not going to say always, but that tends to be an estrogen dominance. So even young women can have estrogen dominance. So when we see fibroids, endometriosis, really strong cramping and heavy bleeding, we start to think high estrogen, and so what we want to do, my favorite thing to do is called a Dutch test. It's a hormone test. And we take a look at that. It's for certain things, it's better than blood testing. For other things, it's not. But if we're looking at, is there estrogen dominance and how well are you metabolizing and detoxifying that estrogen? And there are different pathways, not to get too scientific, but there's a healthy pathway. And then there's a pathway that we look at and we say, oh, that's not working well for you. That tends to be, more pro-disease. We can take a look at some of those things and say, oh, well, this is what's going on. We just need to bring balance back. So that gives us more than just intuition. That lets us, I like the saying, tests don't guess, because there's some tests that are so good and they give you so much information that you can go on.
Yeah. You're not the first guest that has said that. The tests don't guess.
Yeah. It clears everything up very quickly. And it gives the patient the ability to look at themselves. We all like to see what's going on in our bodies and to say, oh my gosh, that explains so much of what I'm dealing with.
And the Dutch test, is that available through, like, if you were just to go to a doctor, or does somebody have to go to a functional practitioner?
Yeah, I don't know any MDs, any doctors in traditional medicine who use it. There might be some, especially if they start to kind of broaden their practice to be integrative. Then you'll probably, if you're looking for an integrative doctor, you're going to probably find some who do Dutch testing. Functional medicine practitioners many offer Dutch testing.
Got it. Okay. I'm going to switch gears a little bit and talk about how our identity impacts the way that we heal. So I would love to hear your thoughts. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is, for so long, I had tried everything. I had tried diets and I had gone to a functional practitioner. I did all the gut stuff, but it took me a really long time to start seeing improvements in my skin. And it wasn't until I think I really doubled down on every day, doing a meditation and telling myself, I'm going to get better and I don't have eczema anymore. That isn't me. And really repeating that and looking in the mirror and doing that practice, it's so much more than, the things that we put on ourselves and eat, right? There's something in our minds that is impacting how we're healing too.
Yes, I would go out on a limb. This has been my passion for the past year, studying this, because it is underrated. It's not recommended nearly enough. And I think it's the missing piece in healing. What we do, our subconscious. So here's a simple explanation. We have our conscious mind that thinks our thoughts. And it could be, I'm so sick of this eczema. Oh my gosh, why is it flaring again? This is so frustrating. And it's a little scary because when am I ever going to get rid of it? Is it always going to be bad? Is it indicating something bigger is going on? And so our brain is sending those messages, sending. And we have this amazing, incredibly powerful subconscious that I forget all the statistics, but something along the lines is there's so much energy in our body that we could literally provide the electricity for a small country for a month, each human body. So we have the subconscious that kind of runs the show, right? It's running the show under the surface. But the subconscious does no decision making, nothing. It's the most powerful thing in our being. But all it does is take information, and it takes information from our mind, from our consciousness, from our thoughts. What we tell it and what we feel emotionally programs it. So it's the most powerful computer in the universe. And we program it every single day. So if we're going through and going, I am so sick of being sick. I am so tired. I'm so scared. Hello, those are all normal, really normal feelings. I've had those feelings. I get them. But if we will be courageous enough to shift the script and start to speak health into our subconscious, The subconscious cannot reject it. It only takes what you tell it. So you've heard, whether you think you're going to win or lose, you're right. Because whatever you tell your subconscious, it can't argue with you. It doesn't know truth from fiction. You've heard of those studies where they had someone practice piano, 30 minutes a day for a month, and you had someone practice it mentally. They didn't touch a piano, and they were almost as good. They never touched the piano. They just practiced mentally because they trained that subconscious. So when you started saying, I no longer identify as someone with eczema. I only identify as someone with healthy skin. Your subconscious got to work and it started the process of healing. Now, all the other things you do are very helpful and important, but that's the key.
What's the difference between, I guess, like speaking positively and actually, I guess, how do you actually tap into the subconscious so that it's not, I'm just saying, oh, I don't have eczema, but, in the back of your mind, and when you look in the mirror, you see it. So you're getting clues, visual cues that it's still there.
That's a great question. And it's like, you've done it, I've done it, and your mind is going, liar, liar. You're like, I'm good. I don't have this anymore. I'm totally healthy. And there's this little voice going, liar, liar. I see it in the mirror, right? So you do exactly what you did. You get into a meditative state. And the most influential times on our subconscious are when we go into theta brainwaves. Now, that sounds like scientific whatever, right? But so to make it simple, it's before you fall asleep at night and right when you wake up in the morning before you get out of bed. That's theta waves. And that's when our subconscious is malleable. It's the most programmable, the easiest time. When you're lying there before you fall asleep, you get into a meditative state, which is just do some deep breathing, like connect to your heart, put your hand on your heart and go, I'm just going to take care of me right now. That's all I'm going to do. It doesn't have to be woo-woo like meditation. You're just lying there and you're going like, I'm going to connect with me. Like this is my body. And then you visualize it. So you picture your skin, think about where was the eczema the worst when you would flare? Like was it on your arms or where did you?
It was everywhere. I dealt with it for probably over a year and a half of it covering my entire body. I had it on my face, my neck, my arms, my stomach. I think the only place that I didn't have it was my butt. But everywhere else.
At least I can sit down, but
yeah, at least I don't, that's not painful to sit like hemorrhoids. So,
oh gosh, that would have been awful and really scary because if it's systemic, it's starting from the inside, but it's all over the outside. So can we use you as an example? I know you did this, but just for illustration. So that you lie in bed at night and you just connect your heart, put your hand on your heart, breathe in and out of your heart. Your heart actually produces energy. And then we have an energy field outside of us that goes about 3 feet that's been measured in certain kind of photographs. I don't know what they are, but anyhow. So lie there, connect your heart, breathe in and out like of your heart. And then you close your eyes and you take that picture and you start looking at your skin. You see yourself. You are the star in the show and you see yourself and you see your skin in your mind's eye as being completely clear. No inflammation, no redness, no cracking, no swelling. You just see it perfect. And then, so you're connecting the picture to the emotion. That is the second piece that people tend to miss in this process. And you just picture like, oh my gosh, this is exactly what I've been wanting. But you don't tell yourself it's what you want. You tell yourself you already have it. And then you're thankful for it. You're grateful. So then you experience the emotions. You see your body as having all that clear skin and it's all better. And then you literally feel the feeling like, that's me right now. Right now, I have no eczema. You go, oh, I am so thankful. I'm so relieved. I am so grateful and happy about this. And you feel that. Some say to just go over that like 6 to 8 times or just do it for a few minutes before you go to bed. But feel deeply that joy and that gratitude. And you do that every night and every morning. And that's how we begin to train that subconscious mind.
That's so interesting because I actually did hypnosis for a while because I thought the subconscious mind that would help.
Yeah.
Interestingly, the hypnosis actually did not help me. And maybe it's because maybe the unlock was that the emotions weren't there and that I I don't know. Maybe I was in a sleepy state during the hypnosis, but to your point about the emotions, I was doing a meditation specifically by Joe Dispenza, and he talks about that where you need to have that emotion combined with the visualization. Otherwise, it doesn't really like get in, doesn't go deep enough.
I bet you're absolutely right. I bet it was because the emotion wasn't there. So the emotion they say is energy in motion. And it's that energy that gets into our subconscious is programmed by pictures and feelings. So if we're really bothered by something, like what we resist persists. So if we keep saying, I hate this, I hate that I have that, your subconscious is programmed by intense emotion. So whatever we hate, we're programming our subconscious. So we got to like recognize it. We're human. We all do that. We all hate certain things, but then you catch it gently and kindly and you say, because the biggest thing of this also is self-kindness and self-love, like self-care, treating ourselves the way we would treat our most precious loved ones. So that is imperative. But then catching that, like, oh, there, I'm programming my subconscious with something I hate, and it will repeat it. So your subconscious goes, oh, you feel strongly about that. Whether it's good or bad, I'm going to give you more of it. So let's figure out, what do we want from a good standpoint? So when we're recognizing those negative feelings, we go, oh, yeah, I did it again. Just quickly replace it. It's not like, oh no, it's not going to work. It will work. It's a law. It will work. It's just repetition, picture an emotion, and patience. And this is something I learned that is so helpful. Then we get into, well, how's it going to get fixed? Well, your subconscious, that doesn't help. That delays it from working properly. The how and the when. Like, leave that alone. Just put that on the shelf. The how and the when is not your job. Your job is what? What is it that you want? And you just go after that mentally, and don't stop. Twice a day, at least twice a day, every day. You picture it, you feel the really strong emotions positively about it, and then thankful for it. And some practitioners I've seen, they just say to themselves, it is done. It's done. You make a decision. This is the way it's going to be. Like, if there's no other option, this is the way it's going to be. I am healthy. I am thrilled about that. And it's done.
That's so powerful. It's like you have to truly believe that it's done, right? Like there can't be doubt.
And then don't look in the mirror.
Well, actually, on that note, I didn't look in a mirror for almost a year. And I know that sounds crazy, but we lived in an apartment at the time, and our bathroom there were no windows in the bathroom. So it would be really, really dark in there. I would go and shower and get ready just with the lights out. I couldn't look at it. I couldn't look at myself. And I did that for almost a year.
Was that during when you were doing the meditation and the...
I was doing all of that at the same time. So the whole journey that I had actually stretched out over a little over 2 years. It started in 2021 really, really badly, and it got progressively worse. And I was put on multiple rounds of different steroids, topical, oral, injectable, and none of that helped. Then I went on a biologic called Dupixent. Didn't help, but instead gave me severe pink eye, I guess. And then the ophthalmologist had told me that I had to stop. Otherwise, I would get glaucoma in my right eye at the age of like 36. So I don't even really know like all the timeline of when I started what, because it was all kind of a blur. But I know at some point I started researching more around the root cause approach. I went to see a functional practitioner. I started meditating, and I think all of those things started to help. The other thing you said is that when you think about it, your brain starts to go in overdrive of, how did this happen? Why me? Is this forever? And all of those thoughts were just constantly in my brain. But after a certain point, I was like, this is how it is right now. So I'm just going to let it go. It is what it is right now.
They call that detachment, that putting it on the shelf. Like, I'm just going to accept it, but I'm going to keep visualizing not having it. The opposite. That's really good. It's good how all those layers came together and finally got you to the other side.
Yeah. And I've learned so much. So I don't actually regret any of it. I think when you're going through something very, very tough, I think it's easy to, be the victim and be, why me? But now after the fact, I guess hindsight is 2020, and I can look back at it almost positively in a sense that it grew me as a person and also taught me so many things about health and wellness. But in the moment, I did not know that this is that was going to turn into this. But now I can, and I can look back at it and be grateful for the experience that I had.
I can so relate. I totally get that. And so just that's great news for all of our listeners, right? It's a season. And if you start putting some of these pieces together, they'll be life changing. They will be. But you also have to be patient and not worry about the how and the when.
Right, exactly. For people who just want a few recommendations from you on how can they tweak their daily lifestyle just a little bit so that they're on the right track to better health and wellness, what would be your go-to recommendations?
It pretty much summarizes a lot of what we've talked about today, Kat. First of all, look at your stress level. See if that or past traumas and see if those are things you've just kind of locked away somewhere and said, it's fine, I'm good. Like I'm totally good. I don't even think about that anymore. You may not, but your body does. So think about that. And if it is, then figure out what the next steps are for you to get some healing. So look at stress, deep stress, which is things that you've held longer that cause more, maybe more damage, but you've shoved them down. That's kind of suppressed stuff, and trauma, which kind of goes hand in hand with the deep stress. I would look at that number one. What is my cortisol level like? You don't have to get it tested. You know yourself. If you're starting to get anxious or panicky, or you notice that certain things, you can feel it, that's a sign. So start figuring that out. There's so many free tools. There's so much you can do to help with that. And even this meditation we talked about at the end, the visualization and the programming your subconscious, your identity work, that's all really helpful for that as well. And then the second thing is clean up your gut, clean it up, clean up your choices at the grocery store, and, get away from some of the processed food, and definitely get away from GMO foods. Those are loaded with pesticides and herbicides like Roundup. So anything that has artificial color, artificial flavor, artificial sweetener is awful. It wrecks your gut. It wrecks your brain. Awful. Diet sodas. Really, you think, is it that bad? I mean, I know, I get it. It actually is. It's very damaging.
To pause on that, are all artificial sweeteners bad? Like stevia and even monk fruit, is that considered an artificial sweetener?
Yes, those are. So stevia
Okay.
is an herb. It's a plant. I've grown it. It's so cool. It's just this green plant. It almost looks a little like a mini sage. And then they dry it and they refine it like crazy. So it's not like it's a health food once it's white, but it's okay. It's definitely not like NutraSweet, Splenda,
Okay.
all the saccharin, all those things. So stevia is fine. Monk fruit is great. It's actually great. It tastes like sugar. It's a pretty close 1-to-1. And yeah, I don't see any downside to that. I have not come across any downside to monk fruit, although it's usually partnered with erythritol. And if you get too much, it'll give you the runs. So
Oh,
moderation is the key with that.
okay.
Yeah. Unless it's directed like straight monk fruit. But normally this stuff I've seen is cut with erythritol. So again, not horrible, just moderation. The other artificial sweeteners, sucralose, acesulfame, K, basically those are the generic names for NutraSweet, Splenda, saccharin, sweet and low, those kinds of things. You definitely want to cut those out. So to heal the gut, focus on whole foods. A Mediterranean style diet is a beautiful option. I don't recommend anyone follows a diet ever, but that would be focusing on really clean protein, fish if you eat it, seafood, good sources of chicken, good sources of meat. And so we're talking grass fed, we're talking organic. For fish, for seafood, we're talking wild caught. So make that like your main stay, along with lots of vegetables, fruits, complex carbohydrates, the ones you can tolerate. A lot of us don't do well on gluten. And I mentioned that in the beginning, but there's so many other options. Brown rice, sweet potatoes, all that kind. So whole foods. And then those three things I talked about with your gut: probiotics, prebiotics, and paying attention to food sensitivities. We all seem to have something that doesn't agree with us, and it could be something that's healthy. It could be that peppers, nightshade, there's peppers, tomatoes, potatoes, those are all nightshade. It could be that you notice you're achy, your elbow hurts, or your shoulder gets stiff after you eat those. Anything you notice a weird symptom, cut it out for 30 days, then try it again.
That's good to know. I start sneezing sometimes after eating an unhealthy meal. I don't know if that's my body telling me I should not have that. As an example, like if I go to dim sum, and I love dim sum, I'm Chinese, I grew up eating Cantonese food, but
Yeah.
every single time I have dim sum, which is greasy, it's not healthy by any means, I'm like sneezing up a storm after.
It is your body. That's actually a sign that your body is rejecting. Is there a healthier version of dim sum somewhere? Like,
Yeah,
maybe.
maybe I could make it myself, some of the things, but
Yeah. Because you don't want to cut out something you love. But if that is another thing, I'm a dietitian by training, and you don't want to cut out foods that you love. You don't. So find alternatives that are close enough that scratch that itch that you're not depriving yourself.
all right, Lisa, this was such a great conversation. Where can people find you to learn more about you and to work with you?
First of all, I also have a podcast called the Pretty Well podcast. So you and I are very close, well done and pretty well. So you can check out the Pretty Well podcast where I talk about all this stuff every week. It's hormones, gut health, anti-aging, and energy, like reversing fatigue and exhaustion. So Pretty Well is a great place to go. And then I have a website, Lisa Smith Wellness, and I have a blog on there and also all kinds of offerings that are available. So yeah, lisasmithwellness.com and Pretty Well on anywhere you listen to podcasts.
All right, how fun was that conversation? I love that we can talk about serious wellness topics while also laughing and having a good time, because that is really the whole point. But there was so much wisdom packed into today's episode. So let me just break down some of the key takeaways. Number 1, stress is not just a secondary player. It is often a driver, if not the sole driver, of health issues. And I know there's a lot of emphasis on stress today, but I don't think we emphasize enough just how big of an impact stress is, whether it's chronic stress or deep stress, what that impact has on our bodies, and how it literally creates holes in our gut lining, which leads to leaky gut. So if you know you're dealing with ongoing stress, try to find the right tools to help you manage, whether that's some deep breathing, meditation, or even just a daily walk that can help you lower your cortisol levels. Number 2, if you heal your gut, you also can heal your hormones and pretty much everything else. So I didn't know this before chatting with Lisa, but hormone health is really based in the gut, because we talked about how your gut microbiome helps regulate estrogen through something called estrobolome. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. When your gut is off, excess estrogen gets recirculated, contributing to worse menstrual symptoms like PMS, heavy cramps, perimenopausal symptoms. And so Lisa recommends some easy steps to help heal your gut if this is happening to you. You can cut back on processed foods, add more prebiotic-rich foods like onions, garlic, bananas to your diet, and also consider a high-quality probiotic. Also, if you are a woman in your late 30s or 40s, it's important to start paying attention to those hormone signals now. Don't wait until you're in full menopause and just feeling absolutely awful. Just look for signs now, like irregular cycles, big mood changes, unexplained irritability, or just a feeling that you don't feel like yourself anymore. Then lastly, number 3, this is my favorite, as I've talked about on past episodes. Healing is not just about your food, supplements, what we do on a physical level. It is so much about mindset, the stories we tell ourselves, the repeated thought patterns around our chronic symptoms. So if you are constantly thinking, I'm exhausted all the time, I am so stressed all the time, you are literally programming your brain and then subsequently your body to maintain that state. But the good news is you can shift your beliefs. And one of the ways to do that is by visualization combined with emotion. So really feeling the feeling of gratitude and joy as if the thing you want, the healing that you want, has already happened, as if it's already just true and you are just super grateful for it happening. I hope this conversation sparked some ideas for your own health journey. If you enjoyed today's episode, I'd be so grateful if you could take just 30 seconds to leave a rating or review or share with a friend who might benefit from this information. And if you'd like to stay connected, you can join our email list. The link is in the show notes. I thank you so much for listening. And remember, your body is wise. What you tell yourself can become reality, so make sure that you are kind to yourself. Small shifts can make a really big impact on healing or big changes in your life. It doesn't need to be all or nothing. Just little things each day can make a huge, huge difference. Until next time.